Picture this. It's January 1st, 1979. We're at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas.
And the weather is just, I mean, it is absolutely miserable.
Oh, completely. The wind is howling, and down in the locker room, the quarterback for Notre Dame is literally huddled under a pile of heavy wool blankets.
Right.
His core body temperature has plummeted to 96 degrees Fahrenheit. He is shivering violently, and the medical staff is just, pumping him full of warm 5E fluids.
They're feeding him chicken soup, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just trying to force his body systems to start firing again.
And you got to keep in mind, this is happening while the second half is already underway outside.
Right.
His team is getting thoroughly dismantled by Houston. They're falling behind 34-12, and this is late in the third quarter.
So the logical, the medical expectation here is that his day, and honestly, probably his season, is completely over.
Oh, for sure.
But he defies every piece of medical advice in that room. He walks back out onto the freezing field.
It's crazy.
He throws 3 touchdowns in the final 8 minutes of the game, including the game winner as the clock literally runs out. They pull off a 35-34 victory.
The legendary chicken soup game.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking the life, the career, and really the architecture of the man at the center of that game, NFL legend Joe Montana.
Yeah, drawing from an extensive biographical breakdown, our mission today is to figure out what made this kid from a Pennsylvania coal town the ultimate clutch performer.
Because it's what, right? We're exploring how a player who lacked the, quintessential physical metrics, he was drafted 82nd overall, became the engine behind 31 NFL fourth-quarter comebacks.
And won 4 Super Bowls.
Without throwing a single interception in the big game.
Which is just an unbelievable stat. And to understand the mechanics of how he pulled that off, you really have to trace his athletic foundation back to his hometown.
Right. New Eagle, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And his upbringing in the neighboring coal mining town of Monongahela. It was this gritty, working-class environment. And his father instilled a fierce competitive drive super early on.
Oh, I read about this. His dad signed him up for youth football when he was only 8, right?
Yes. He actually wrote down that Joe was 9 just to meet the league's minimum age requirement.
That's hilarious. But I always find it fascinating when, the sport a legendary athlete is known for wasn't actually their first love.
Total.
Because growing up, football took a backseat to basketball for him.
Oh, yeah, big time. His dad even started a local basketball team. They'd practice at the local armory.
And he was good, right? By the time he reached Ringgold High School, he was an all-state player.
Yeah, he helped his team win a state basketball championship.
Wow.
North Carolina State even offered him a basketball scholarship with a footnote that, hey, you can play football too.
But he chose Notre Dame.
Right, because he idolized their former quarterback, Terry Hanratty.
Which is such a massive sliding doors moment. Because think of his basketball background as the underlying operating system for his entire football career.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, when you watch his professional game tape, he navigated a collapsing pocket the same way a point guard navigates a fast break.
Exactly. We tend to view multi-sport athletes just through the lens of, general physical fitness.
Right.
But basketball trained his brain in a very specific way. It built his spatial processing.
Because on a basketball court, a great point guard isn't staring at the ball.
No, they are mapping the movement of all 10 players simultaneously. They're anticipating where a passing lane will open a full second before it actually does.
So he didn't rely on raw arm strength to fire a ball through a defender. He relied on peripheral vision and, geometric calculation.
Yeah, reading the hips of a middle linebacker the exact same way a guard reads a defender at the top of the key.
Yeah.
Throwing to the spot where his receiver was going to be rather than where they currently were.
But while that elite spatial awareness was developing on the court, his psychological profile was being forged by some severe tests of patience on the football field.
Oh, absolutely. In his first 2 years of high school, despite his obvious talent, he was relegated to the backup role.
Forced to just stand on the sideline and observe.
Right. It established this early pattern of having to wait for the window of opportunity to open and then having to prove his worth instantaneously when it did.
And that pattern of forced patience completely accelerated the moment he arrived at Notre Dame.
Because freshmen weren't permitted to play varsity football at the time.
Right. Then, just as he's poised to make an impact, he separates his shoulder before his junior year.
Has to take a medical red shirt.
So by the time the 1977 season kicks off, he is buried at 3rd on the depth chart.
Yeah, just watching Rusty Lish and Gary Forysek run the offense.
So how does he actually get his shot?
Well, he only sees the field during the third game of the season against Purdue because of a catastrophic sequence of events.
Oh,
The starter gets benched, the backup goes in, and then suffers a devastating career-ending injury on a single play.
wait, a broken vertebra?
A broken vertebra, a broken collarbone, and a severe concussion.
That is horrific.
It was awful. So the coach puts the first quarterback back in, but the offense continues to stall.
Okay.
And with about 11 minutes left in the game, Notre Dame trailing 24-14, head coach Dan Devine finally looks down the sideline and points to Montana.
So he steps into this chaotic, high-stress environment, down by 10 points on the road,
Yeah.
and proceeds to throw for 154 yards and a touchdown, orchestrating a 31-24 victory,
Just claims the starting job right there.
and leads Notre Dame to the 1977 National Championship, picking up the nickname the Comeback Kid after these insane late-game rallies against North Carolina and Air Force.
Right.
But I do have a cynical take on this whole comeback narrative.
Okay, let's hear it.
When a team is up by 2 scores late in the fourth quarter, they typically switch to a soft prevent defense. You know, they rush 3 linemen, drop everyone else back just to bleed the clock. Aren't we just handing him a clutch cape for exploiting defensive schemes that are literally designed to give up underneath yards?
Okay, it is a fair pushback. And plenty of quarterbacks do pad their stats in garbage time against a prevent zone.
Exactly.
But if you analyze the game tape from those 1977 comebacks or his later NFL drives, these weren't soft zones giving up the middle of the field.
Really?
No, opposing coordinators were sending exotic blitz packages to try and end the game. What separated him was actually physiological.
Meaning what?
Under extreme duress, the human body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. The natural biological response is tunnel vision. You lose your peripheral sight, and your fine motor skills degrade.
You essentially go into fight or flight mode.
Precisely.
Wow.
But Montana's parasympathetic nervous system seemed to operate in reverse.
Wow.
The more chaotic the environment became, the lower his heart rate seemed to drop. The tunnel vision never set in. His peripheral vision remained completely wide open.
That's practically a superpower.
And Dan Devine recognized this anomaly immediately. After watching him practice, Devine went home and told his wife he was starting Montana.
And she asked who that was, right?
Yeah, and Devine told her, he's the guy who's going to feed our family for the next few years.
That is an amazing quote.
He saw that chaos was just his baseline comfort zone.
Okay, so if his brain was mapped for this highly complex spatial geometry and his nervous system was built for high-stakes pressure, why was the entire NFL scouting apparatus blind to it in 1979?
Oh, the draft evaluation process.
Yeah, he wins a national championship, he pulls off the chicken soup game, and the scouts look at his combine performance and rate him a measly 6.5 out of 9 overall.
They gave him a 6 for arm strength.
Right, so he plummets to the end of the third round, 82nd overall, the 4th quarterback taken.
Because the process is inherently flawed. It measures the container, not the processor.
I like that.
A radar gun can measure the velocity of a football leaving a hand, and a stopwatch can measure a 40-yard dash. But in 1979, there was absolutely no metric for processing speed or emotional regulation.
They saw a player with a thin frame and an average arm, and they extrapolated that into an average NFL projection.
Exactly. They were judging a chess grandmaster by how much he could bench press.
It misses the point of the game entirely. And falling that far in the draft put a massive chip on his shoulder when he arrived in San Francisco.
Oh, completely.
Especially since he barely saw the field his rookie year, threw just 23 passes.
He had to wait, just like high school, just like college.
But that waiting period aligned perfectly with head coach Bill Walsh.
Yes. Walsh was installing a system that required exactly the type of processor Montana possessed.
What would become known as the West Coast offense.
Right. Traditional NFL offenses at the time relied on establishing a heavy running game to set up deep vertical passes.
The old ground and pound.
Yeah, but Walsh inverted that. He used short, horizontal, highly choreographed passing routes as an extension of the running game.
And to execute it, the quarterback had to release the ball before the receiver even made their break.
It demanded flawless timing, anticipation, and just supreme accuracy.
Which brings us to January 1982. The NFC Championship game against the mighty Dallas Cowboys.
America's team.
Right. They were the established dynasty. The 49ers were the upstarts. Down 27-21 with 4 minutes and 54 seconds remaining, San Francisco takes over on their own 11-yard line.
So backed up.
Over the next 4 minutes, he methodically marches them 89 yards down the field. And it culminates in a play simply known as the catch.
Is a play design called sprint right option. On third down from the Dallas 6-yard line, his primary read is covered. The pocket collapses, and 3 Dallas defenders bear down on him.
Yeah.
He rolls right, fading backward, throwing completely off balance. He lofts a pass high toward the back of the end zone, and Dwight Clark leaps up to pull it down.
You know, when you watch the replay, it looks almost reckless. He's throwing off his back foot into double coverage.
It looks reckless to the viewer, but it was highly calculated. He threw it to a coordinate where literally only Clark could reach it. If Clark missed it, the ball was just sailing out of bounds.
The execution of that drive didn't just win a football game. It fundamentally altered the psychology of the San Francisco franchise.
It proved that Walsh's intellectual, timing-based offense could actually dismantle the physical dominance of the Cowboys.
And propelled them to Super Bowl XXIII, where they beat Cincinnati, and Montana took home the Super Bowl MVP.
Which puts him in incredibly rare company.
At the time, he became only the second quarterback ever joining his childhood idol Joe Namath to win both a college national title and a Super Bowl.
Proving the draft scouts spectacularly wrong.
He had the ring, the system was validated, and what followed was a period of overwhelming dominance.
Yeah, in 1984, the 49ers rolled to a 15-1 regular season.
They meet Dan Marino and the Miami Dolphins in Super Bowl IX, and Marino had just shattered every passing record in the league.
But San Francisco dismantled Miami 38-16, with Montana setting the Super Bowl passing record of 331 yards.
The narrative usually stops there, right? It paints him as this flawless tactician operating a beautiful machine.
But the reality of his career is far more violent.
Right.
The West Coast offense required him to stand in the pocket until the last possible fraction of a second to let routes develop.
Which meant he absorbed devastating hits.
Huge hits. And in week 1 of the 1986 season, that physical toll manifested in a severe lower back spinal disc injury.
I was looking at the medical reports from this, and it was a rupture of the L5 disc. It wasn't a tweak or a strain. The disc was pressing directly onto the nerve root.
Oh, it was bad. The doctors told him he needed major surgery, and the consensus medical opinion was that he should retire.
Because one bad hit post-surgery could result in permanent paralysis.
Right, so they placed him on the injured reserve list in September.
And yet, he returns to the active roster in November of that very same year.
2 months later.
2 months after major spinal surgery.
And he returned to the field and threw for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns in his first game back.
That's insane.
Eventually sharing the Comeback Player of the Year award.
This detail forces me to completely reevaluate the Joe Cool moniker.
How so?
Well, the nickname implies a detached, icy, almost aloof demeanor. But rushing back from spinal surgery in 2 months, risking your ability to walk, that reveals a stubbornness that borders on irrational.
Yeah, it really exposes an unhinged, white-hot competitiveness underneath the calm exterior.
Definitely.
And the contrast is striking because he was never a physical specimen. I mean, his teammates jokingly called him bird legs because his calves are so incredibly skinny.
That's so funny.
But that fragility is exactly what elevates his legacy. He wasn't a tank shrugging off tackles. He felt every hit. His body broke down repeatedly, and yet he continuously chose to step back into the chaos.
So the Joe Cool persona wasn't a lack of emotion. It was a masterful regulation of a fierce internal drive.
Exactly.
But just as he overcomes the physical breakdown of his spine, he is confronted with a massive existential threat from his own front office.
In 1987, Bill Walsh traded for Tampa Bay quarterback Steve Young.
Which remains one of the most agonizing succession dramas in the history of the sport.
Oh, yeah. Steve Young was the modern prototype. He had a cannon for an arm, he was incredibly fast, and he could break a game wide open with his legs.
Walsh saw the physical toll the game was taking on his veteran and brought in the future.
Right.
It's the classic innovator's dilemma playing out in a locker room. You know, you have a legendary founder who built the company from the ground up, and the board brings in a hotshot new executive to eventually replace him.
The tension must have been suffocating.
But his response to that pressure was to produce the most brilliant stretch of his career.
Starting with the 1988 season, which culminates in Super Bowl XXIII against the Cincinnati Bengals.
San Francisco is trailing 16-13. There are 3 minutes and 20 seconds left on the clock.
The offense takes the field pinned deep on their own 8-yard line.
The season is slipping away, the crowd noise is deafening.
And this is where the emotional regulation peaks. The players in the huddle are hyperventilating. The offensive line is exhausted.
And instead of barking out a play, he looks past the huddle, points into the stands and says, "Hey, isn't that John Candy?"
He spots a famous comedian in the crowd and just decides to point it out.
Which is amazing.
It was a calculated psychological reset. By breaking the tension, he lowered the collective heart rate of his entire offense.
And then he proceeds to surgically complete 8 of his 9 passes for 92 yards.
Hitting John Taylor for a 10-yard touchdown with just 34 seconds left to win the Super Bowl.
He follows that up in 1989 by winning the league MVP, posting the highest single-season passer rating in history to that point, and dismantling the Denver Broncos 55-10 in Super Bowl XXIII.
Claiming his 3rd Super Bowl MVP, he was at the absolute summit of the sport.
But the bill for that physical sacrifice came due again. In 1991, a severe tendon injury in his elbow sidelines him.
He ends up missing almost 2 full seasons. And nature abhors a vacuum.
Steve Young steps in.
And thrives. He wins the MVP in 1992.
So when the veteran finally gets healthy, the 49ers are trapped in an impossible position.
They really are. They have the architect of their dynasty, the face of the franchise, healthy and ready to play. But they also have the reigning league MVP in the prime of his career, who refuses to go back to holding a clipboard.
The locker room fractures. Players are quietly taking sides, and realizing the era in San Francisco is over, he formally requests a trade.
So in April of 1993, he is shipped to the Kansas City Chiefs.
And this final chapter is fascinating. He arrives in Kansas City and opts to wear number 19.
Because the Chiefs had actually retired number 16 for Len Dawson, though Dawson reached out and offered to unretire it for him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he declined out of respect and took 19 instead.
And his impact in Kansas City was immediate and profound, not just on the stat sheet, but on the culture of the building.
The defensive players for the Chiefs would literally stay out on the field after their own practice ended just to watch him run the offense.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Professional veteran athletes were treating him like a clinic on quarterback mechanics.
And he leads the Chiefs to their first AFC Championship game that season.
He does.
But the cinematic climax of this late career run happens in Week 2 of the 1994 season. The Kansas City Chiefs host the San Francisco 49ers.
The ultimate revenge game.
He lines up across from Steve Young, the man who took his job, and Bill Walsh's former team, and he outduels them, leading the Chiefs to a 24-17 victory amidst the deafening noise of Arrowhead Stadium.
Incredible.
So does that game validate his belief that San Francisco made a massive mistake, or is it just a perfectly timed dramatic send-off?
I view it as the final proving ground for his own legacy. There was always a lingering critique that he was simply a byproduct of Bill Walsh's genius.
That anyone could succeed in that meticulously designed West Coast system.
Right. Winning in Kansas City, taking them to an AFC Championship, and explicitly beating his former team proved that the greatness resided in his own mind. He was the catalyst, not the system.
He retired in 1995. And when you zoom out to look at the totality of his career, you have to look at the Super Bowl metrics.
Yeah, let's hear it.
4 appearances, 4 victories, 0 losses. Across those 4 games, on the most high-stakes platform in American sports, he threw 122 passes. He did not throw a single interception. He walked away with a career Super Bowl passer rating of 127.8.
Executing 122 decisions against elite defenses under maximum pressure without making a single catastrophic error is a testament to the processing speed we talked about earlier.
It's the culmination of the spatial awareness honed on the basketball court and that abnormal physiological calm he exhibited going back to his days at Notre Dame.
The invisible metrics.
Exactly. The narrative of Joe Montana challenges how we evaluate potential, not just in sports, but in any high-stakes environment. We obsess over the measurable data.
We look for the strongest arm, the fastest sprint, the elite degree, the flawless resume.
But we continually underestimate those invisible metrics. You cannot gauge emotional composure with a stopwatch. You cannot measure a person's capacity to process geometry under fire on a spreadsheet.
You really can't.
Which leaves you with a compelling thought to consider about the landscape of sports and maybe your own profession today. We live in an era of intense, year-round athletic specialization. Kids are funneled into a single sport by the time they're 8 years old.
Yeah, they don't play multiple sports anymore.
If he were growing up right now, he likely never would have developed that point guard operating system on the basketball court. And if he showed up to a modern, analytics-driven, combined with a skinny frame and average arm strength, the algorithms would flag him as a liability.
You'd be completely overlooked.
So how many strategic geniuses are we currently filtering out of our systems simply because they don't fit the physical prototype? The invisible traits are the hardest to measure, but as we've seen, they are the only ones that actually matter when the pocket collapses.